Alright, so now we're going to dive in and add a lot more details into our toy train here. So let's start kind of from the bottom up, I think. So we're really going to replace these wheels, honestly. Select one, frame in on it. I'm going to right click into my marking menu, and then I'm going to go to edges. So I'm going to select this whole loop of edges on both of these sides. So to do that really quickly, I can, with that one highlighted, I can double click. It selects that whole edge loop. I'm going to hold shift and do it again on this side. Alright, so we want to add that little bit of a bevel to this wheel. So I'm going to come up to Edit Mesh, and there's a bevel option. So when I click that, it's actually going to go way too far. So here under Fraction, in this little poly bevel pop-up window, I can put my mouse on Fraction and drag that more to the left. This goes by tenths of a unit, so if 0.1 is still too much for you, if you wanted to do a little bit less, you have to go in and type that in yourself. So really that's all I really need on this wheel, just to add a little bit of a bevel on there. That 0.1 is actually just small enough. I don't want anything more. Additionally, I'll just go over kind of what these do real quick. Under segments, that gives that bevel more detail. But I mean, for this project, that's way too much, so just one segment is good enough. But actually, for a second, let me leave it up. So for depth, we can go, it kind of tells which direction to go. So if we look real close, I set this to a negative depth, and it's actually going kind of the opposite direction. It's more like you took a router and cut away that bevel. So we do want that to go out. And then the mitering, there's all these, you can kind of play with these, just see what they do. I don't know if it's going to do a whole lot right now. But yeah. And then there's chamfer, which if we turn that off, it actually just puts in the subdivisions and doesn't bend anything for us. So we want that on. And again, dropping my segments back down just to 1, because that is plenty. So instead of, let's go back to object mode, right click, going out to object mode. Instead of doing that for each and every wheel, I'm going to take this one, get my move tool, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm just going to replace the ones that we have. So here, going this way, we're going to duplicate. Let's bring me up there so I don't get overwritten by keyboard shortcuts. So we've duplicated. I have another one here. I'm going to hold down V to snap to vertex, and I'm going to snap it to that guy right there. A fast way to select the other one is to hold down Shift, and I'm just going to drag a little marquee box. And you can see that I switched over to that P cylinder 2. Because when you pressed Shift in Maya to select things, it will add on to a selection, but it will also take away from a selection. So if you have something selected already and you're holding Shift, it will take that away. So if I have, say, if there are two things on top of one another, you select one, hold Shift, and drag a marquee, it'll deselect the one that is selected and select the one that's not. And so I can just go and delete that. So now I have 2 of those. And so just like we did with the other side, grab both of these, Command D, and I'm actually just going to go up to my translate, hit minus in front of that, and bring those over. And then let's see if I can get a good angle on this to do this all at once. Holding Shift, select all of those, the old ones, delete those, get those in. Alright, and I'm going to show you this once, and then I'm going to have you do the second one. So I'm going to grab all 4 of these wheels, just the wheels, please. Duplicate those. this is going to get a little interesting. So I'm going to double click on my move tool over here. I want to make sure that my axis orientation is on object. And then under move snap settings, I'm going to double check, make sure that retain component spacing is on. And then similarly to what we did before, hold V to snap to vertex and snap these back on top of those other wheels. And then I can close those tool settings. And then I'll go into cart 1, select all of my wheels that are there, and delete those. So right now, I've got wheels for one of my cars, but they're in my engine group. So I'm going to select those wheels, and using my middle mouse button, I'm going to click with the middle mouse and drag them into the car group. You can tell that it'll be into the car group because it'll be a circle like this one, or sorry, the dotted line goes all the way around that line instead of just a line like this. If I let go with just the line, it just kind of moves them to that section. But if there's a kind of a dotted box all the way around it, it'll go into that other object. It'll add things as a child to that object. So this is actually a way that you could make, let's say, so if I just wanted, the wheels to be children of that base there, I can grab these wheels and then make them a child of that. And so anytime I move the base of that engine, then that goes go along too. But we don't have to do that right now because everything is in that engine. All right, so one more time, I want you to duplicate a set of wheels. Make sure that in your move settings, double click, that you're on object and that your move snap is set to retain component spacing, that is on. That'll keep those wheels separate. If that's off and we're in world space, if you do that, it'll put them all together. So object space, retain component spacing, duplicate, replace those wheels back there. Okay, so that's a little challenge. Do that last little bit and come on back. All right, so another thing that we need to do, I mentioned things not being in the groups that they're supposed to be. All of these objects on the top of the engine never went into the engine group. So select all those, middle mouse click and drag those into the engine group so that when we select that group, everything will go along with that as well. Alright, so moving up from the wheels, let's go on to the boiler. So kind of the same thing that we just did. We'll go into edge mode, double click that front edge loop. We can bevel this. Lots of beveling. So again, that 0.1, this is where 0.1 might still be too much, and I would want to go in and say like 0.05. That gets about that same edge as the wheels. That's about it for right now. So let's do some interesting stuff. I want to get, if you look real close, there's a bit of a kind of an outcropping that comes out for the back end of the cab there. And to do that, I need to have a subdivision on this part of the cab. Now when you're creating primitives, if you go to the inputs, you can change the subdivisions here. So there's you can tell it how many subdivisions to have for the width, the height, the depth. So if I change that now, that's actually working. But if this doesn't work and your cube kind of starts to collapse and do some weird things, then obviously set that back to 1, and we can use some of our modeling tools. So under mesh tools, there's one called Insert Edge Loop. And when you use this, when you click and drag on an edge, it tries to put an edge loop all the way around, perpendicular to the edge that you clicked on. And so I'm going to do it this way, just so I can put this right where I want it to begin with. So I'll do that right about there. That kind of lines up with that outcropping right there. And then I need to, let's switch back to my move tool. And then I need to go, that was not my move tool, sorry. Switch back to my move tool. And then come back around to the back here. I'm going to right click, go into face mode, and I'm going to select that little face right there. And I'm going to extrude this out. So I'm going to hold shift, and you see how under my mouse it says the word extrude. Let me get a little bit better angle because I'm going to use this the Z axis right here to constrain to that. Hold shift, and then just pull this out. I'm pulling out more geometry. So I'm going to pull that out a little bit. Once I have that out, I don't need to hold shift anymore because otherwise it will start creating more and more stuff, and we don't want that. So just one extrusion there. And that also has a little bit of, or it has a beveled edge there. So switching back to edges. As you get further along in projects and you're modeling more complex things, beveling is not always the best thing, and this is why. So let me get my fraction going where I want it, and I'm going to increase my segments maybe just a little bit, something like that. So if you are modeling something that is it's a hard surface, it's not going to move, this may or may not be that big of a deal. But if you're doing something organic and you're going to like really unwrap UVs and things like that, this will be a big deal. So pretty much up until right now, everything that we've done has been a four-sided polygon. Even on these bevels here, these are all four-sided polygons. I guess these are triangles. Triangles are okay too. So triangles are good. Quads are good. Now this is an n-gon. It's actually 1, 2, 3. It's a five-sided polygon. So we've made a pentagon here. A lot of the like automatic tools, and even just that there's a lot of tools that kind of require quads or tris. So if I needed to do something kind of extra with this, I would need to go back in and subdivide this properly. So as a mental note, n-gons, bad. Anything that's more than 4, bad. Don't do this unless you know what you're doing. For this project, it's okay. But anything more than a simple children's toy, no bueno. And we're going to make some more of them here in a little bit too. So that's good for that right there. For the top of our cab, let's go back into edge mode, because you can see the front and back are a sharp edge, but the sides are not. So we just want to grab those two edges. We can bevel. There's actually a keyboard shortcut. Any of these, if you see a shortcut here, that's the shortcut to do that command. So on a Mac, this is Control B. All right, so let me go back down here, Control B, and then I can try to copy that curve. So I'm going to need some more segments and kind of play with the fraction. So something like that. And then there's a tiny bit of a bevel on the bottom edge too. So we'll select those two guys. Same thing, Control B. And this time the fraction will be a lot lower just to give a little bit of a roundness there. And then let's work our way forward to the smokestack, just like the boiler part. Just grab that, bevel it. Maybe something like that. And then for our chimney, there's a little bit of a diagonal there, and then it kind of curves in. So this top part is straight, and then the bottom part curves. So let's definitely go use our Insert Edge Loop tool. Let's insert that edge loop there. I'm going to switch back to, I'm just going to use my selection tool. I'm going to select that top row, sorry, that top edge loop, and I need to scale that down some. Maybe I can grab this edge loop and move it back up. I'm trying to match that angle. That looks okay. I'm going to need another edge loop down under here. I need to scale that in. I may need to, or I definitely need to go into, I'm going to go into wireframe mode. I'm going to press 4 on my keyboard. I'm going to also select that edge loop that's inside of the boiler, scale that down. And really I just want that a little bit smaller than this edge loop that we inserted just a second ago. But I'm going to go back to that one. I'm going to hit 5 to go back to shaded display. And then the same thing, we can bevel this. Change the number of segments. And we can play with that fraction to get kind of what we want. So once we make this bevel, we can still go select those edges and kind of place them kind of more where we want them. So we have this gradual change from the bottom up to the top. So something like that. That change in direction is not as sharp as what I have right now, so I'm going to select that edge right there, bevel one more time, drop the fraction a lot, and that looks pretty good. Maybe on the top too. That one I want smaller, 0.05. I can go back out to object mode. Look at our handiwork. Looks pretty good. All right. The cab is actually empty, and then, like I said, we're going to make the cars look something like this. So let's do the cars first because it's a much simpler shape. So we extruded a face here. We're going to extrude some more faces over here. And so on the base of my first car, I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to select that top face and just move it up to kind of match kind of the height of my engine. With that face still selected, I'm going to switch to my scale tool, and I can extrude with the scale tool. This is really cool and really powerful. So I'm going to hold shift, get my extrude there. I'm going to click in the middle so that this extrudes from all sides. And I'm going to come in. I'm mainly looking at the sides here because as I uniformly scale that down, the front and the back are going to come in further than what I actually want them to. So I'm going to let go of shift and then just rescale that up so that is roughly the same thickness all the way around. So one more time. Do all that. Holding shift, I'm going to extrude in some, and then let go of shift. Just scale that to make the thickness of the perimeter more. And then to continue on, let's switch to the move tool, and we're going to extrude this in. So holding shift, drag that down, and now I have an empty boxcar. And so I move this down however much you want, but just don't move it all the way through the floor. You can do impossible things in 3D. So it doesn't have to go all the way down, but you can if you want. Just make sure that it's kind of an empty bowl here. And then instead of doing that whole thing for that third car, I'm just going to delete that car. And then I'm going to go to my first car again, go back to the top view, duplicate it, and put it back, holding X to snap to the grid, back up where it was. Yeah, my key capture device doesn't like it when I snap to things. Alright, so coming back to that. Okay, so now the fun part. We need to pretty much do the same thing we did with our boxcar to the inside of our cab. I'm going to do this slightly different. Go into face mode. On the cab, I'm going to select all these faces. You may have to adjust your view as you select those. So I had been holding Shift. This is a quick way to get to extrude. Under Edit Mesh, there is a whole extrude option here. It ends up doing the same thing, but just in a little more powerful way. You have a little more control over the extrude when you do it this way. So when I do that, I get this really cool like universal manipulator. You can see that it has the move tool arrows, it has the scale tool boxes there, and then there's a rotate tool circle around that. And if I click on that circle, that's when that gizmo pops up as well. And so very similarly, I want to grab just my scale on the X, and I can bring this in, and then on the Y I want to bring that in as well. Trying to match this. Honestly, this is going to be messy kind of either way we do this, any way we do this. And then I can extrude one more time. I'm just going to switch to my move tool for this one, and I can bring that in. So a couple things. Extruding that way makes the outside edge and the inside edge of this part not even. So if we go, let's fix that first, and then we can fix the inside of this. So in my side view, I'm going to go into wireframe, pressing 4, and let's zoom in on this stuff. I'm going to go into vertex mode, and I'm going to select this vertex and that vertex. I'm going to hold V, and I'm going to snap those in the Y and X direction, just in case, to that outside one, which is, you can kind of see it right about there. So holding V, snap up there to line those back up. I'm going to do that with all of the inside vertices. So make sure you select both sides, and then holding V, snap left and right, snap up and down. And these guys too. So now you can see that that is one solid line again. Those are perfectly lined up inside and out. And then back to my faces. Hopefully those faces will just reselect for you. If they don't, then you need to go back in and select all of them. And we're going to flatten these out. So remember how earlier with the wheels, in our move snap settings, we wanted this to be off, or sorry, we wanted this to be on. Now we want it to be off. So uncheck that, and then our axis orientation needs to be on the world. And then again in the side view, I can I'm gonna hold X, snap that to a grid line, and then after that's snapped, I can let go of my snapping and then just move it wherever I want it to go, wherever I need it to go. And then, for my peace of mind, we made a really, really small face here. So I'm going to go into edge mode and then just move that up. That's not really necessary, but makes me feel better. Just separate these guys out some. Alright, and finally, the last thing we're going to do is, back on here, there was a little window. So we're going to cut that window out. And again, this only really works with hard surface modeling. We're going to make one more cylinder. We're going to turn it sideways. And let's go place it kind of here with our scale tool. Have this go all the way through. But that's a lot smaller than that. So somewhere in there. And then it looks like the top of that window kind of lines up with that edge there. So again, use your creative freedom. Line that up. And we're going to do a Boolean operation. So up under Mesh, there are, under Combine, there are 3 different Booleans we can do. There's union, difference, and intersection. Union will combine 2 things together. Difference cuts one away from the other, and then intersection leaves, it kind of cuts the outsides away from the 2 different things. We're going to do a difference, but first we need to select the 2 objects. So when we're doing a difference, it matters in the order of which you select these objects. So to start with, we're going to select the base and then shift select the thing that's going to be cut away. So I'm going to select the cab and then that cylinder that's going to cut out our windows. So we'll go, once you have that selected, Mesh, Booleans, difference, and that will cut that window out. And so, again, this is probably the only time in this class we're going to use Booleans. Because they make really, really gross geometry. So if we look at this face, this is now, these 2 faces are big ol' n-gons. And then the same thing on the back, that they just make really, really ugly, bad geometry that you then have to fix later. Sometimes that's what you have to do, but it's better to not have to do it in the first place. So, the last thing we need to do is to clean up our history. So if you look under inputs for any object that you have, the computer is doing calculations and is running through each of these things to give you the result here in the viewport. So like for this guy, especially with this Boolean, it starts, there's a cylinder stuff in here, it's making a cube, it's splitting that ring that I did to extrude that section out. I moved some stuff around, we did a bevel, and then 2 more extrusions. It's just, there's all kinds of stuff here. Oh, it's the, there's just a whole bunch of things there. And so we want those to go away. The cool part is, up until you clear out your history, this new object is still connected to both the original cube and that cylinder. So I can go in and find that cylinder, like this guy right here. I can use the move tool and I can move this around. Look at that, that's pretty cool, huh? So if you didn't get it exactly right the first time, you can go find these little transform nodes and you can move them around. And that's essentially the that original cylinder. But once you have that in the right place, we don't want those connections to stay there. So on this new cube object, I can come up to Edit and then Delete History, and then all that stuff goes away. It did get taken out of my engine group, so I need to put that back in there. And instead of going to each and every little piece, we can come up to Edit and then Delete All by Type and then History. And so that will go through the entire scene, and then all these guys now have no more inputs that they have. Similarly, I want to get rid of these non-zero and non-one like translations and rotations. So I can select everything, zoom out, make a big old box. I'm going to go to modify and then freeze transformations. Reset will set them, will change the values to 0 to whatever it was to begin with, like that. Oh, no good. But if we freeze those transformations, then it says, hey, that's your new center. So we're going to delete all our history, freeze all our transformations. We can close these up. Let's save again. And then in the next video, we're going to colorize everything. We're going to make it look super cool. So join me next time.